Hi, today we are looking at sections 3.1 and 3.2, which both deal with factoring. So when we're given a trinomial of a form x squared plus bx plus c, we will be able to solve for x by factoring. To factor, we follow the following steps. We want to move everything to one side of the equation, so it takes the form of x squared plus bx plus c. You'll note that our x squared term is positive. We always want the squared term to be positive when factoring. Then to factor, what we do is we find two values that multiply to be our c value and add to be our b value. We then create two binomial factors with those numbers. So for example, factor, we've got x squared plus 10 minus 7x. So first thing I'm going to do is move everything to one side. So I'll add 7x to both sides. So that gives us x squared plus 7x plus 10 equals 0. Now, factoring that we're doing is sometimes called product sum factoring because we're looking up for a product, which will be this last term of 10, and a sum that is this middle term, which is 7. So two things that multiply to 10 and add to 7 would be 5 and 2, because 5 times 2 gives us 10, and 5 plus 2 gives us 7. So we'll utilize those now in factoring. So we've got x plus 5 and x plus 2. Next example, we've got 2d squared plus 6d equals 56. So first thing I would do is subtract 56 from both sides. So that gives us 2d squared plus 6d minus 56 equals 0. We'll divide everything there by 2 and move the 2 to the front. So that's 2 times d squared plus 3d minus 28. And then once again, we'll do our product sum factoring. So our product is this last term, so negative 28, or our sum is positive 3. Now, because we have two things that multiply to negative, we know one's negative, one is positive, and we know the positive number is going to be larger because it adds to a positive. So two numbers that multiply to negative 28 and add to 3 would be 7 and negative 4. Because those two multiply to negative 28 and they add to 3. So we'd have 2 times d plus 7 and d minus 4. Now, when there is a coefficient in front of our x squared term that can't be factored out of all the terms, we will factor in a similar way to before with a few small changes. So our equation now takes the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. So our product, instead of just being our c value, is going to be our a times our c. We're still adding to our b value. And we're going to find what two values multiply to that product and add to that sum. And then we're breaking our b term into two separate terms with those values. From here, we factor our first two terms and our last two terms, and then simplify. So for example, factor. So we've got 2x squared plus 10x equals x plus 5. So once again, first thing, move everything to one side. So that gives us 2x squared plus 9x minus 5 equals 0. Now in this case, our product is this times this. So our product would be 2 times negative 5, so that's going to be negative 10. While our sum is 9. So two things and multiply to negative 10 and add to 9 would be 10 and negative 1. So because we have a value in front of our x squared, we can't go straight to brackets. Instead, we're breaking up this middle term. So we're going to rewrite our equation as 2x squared plus 10x. And then we've got minus 1, so minus x minus 5 equals 0. So we've used those two here, and we can see that if we were to combine these, we would go back to equaling our 9x. Now what we do is we factor in groups of two. So we'll look at our first two terms. Of our first two terms, we can factor out a 2x. Now, if I factor 2x out of 2x squared, that gives me x. And if I factor 2x out of 10x, that gives me 5. Now, the second two terms, I can factor that negative out of. So that becomes negative of x plus 5. So you'll notice that we have this factor occur twice. That should happen every time, and that means that that is one of your two factors. The other factor comes from these coefficients. So this is 2x, and technically this would be a minus 1, so minus 1. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing with this example. Here, everything's already moved to one side. So our product in this case is our 3 times our negative 8, so negative 24, with a sum of negative 10. So two things that multiply to negative 24 and add to negative 10 would be negative 12 and positive 2. So it's multiplied to give us negative 24, and negative 12 plus 2 gives us negative 10. So we'll split this middle term up again. So we've got 3x squared minus 12x plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. So we'll look at our first two terms again. With these first two terms, we can factor out a 3x. So that gives us x minus 4. These second two terms, we can factor out a 2. So we've got plus 2 times x minus 4. So if the brackets that repeat themselves are one of our factors, so x minus 4, while our other factors are 3x plus 2. Now, the factoring that we've been doing is known as decomposition. Now, there's an alternative way to factor. We'll do the same product sum step, but instead of breaking our b term into two terms, we go straight to our binomial factors. Each factor will start with whatever our a value was from our equation, so we'll have ax, and then end with the two values it comes up with, and then we have to divide a out of our solution, whether that's out of one of our factors, or if we break a up and divide each of our factors by components of it. So we'll look at the exact same examples and show how to do it using this other method. So we subtract x from both sides, subtract 5 from both sides. So that gives us 2x squared plus 9x minus 5 equals 0. Now with this, we once again have a product of 2 times negative 5, so negative 10, and a sum of 9. So if you recall, we had said that that was positive 10 and negative 1. So with this method of factoring, because we start this with a 2, we start each of these brackets of 2, so 2x, 2x, and then we'll utilize the values from here. So we've got plus 10 and minus 1. Now, we see that if we multiply this out, we'd have a 4x squared. So that's why we have to divide one of our brackets by this 2 that's in front. So I would divide this one by the 2 in front. So that gives us x plus 5 times 2x minus 1. So you'll find that that matches the answer we came up with previously. Now this one, we had our product of negative 24 with a sum of negative 10, and we said that that was negative 12 times 2, or negative 12 plus 2. So we once again start each bracket with 3x. And then we have minus 12 and plus 2. So now we have to divide the as in front of one of these. We can see this one would give us a fraction, this one doesn't, so we'll divide it out of this one. So that gives us x minus 4 times 3x plus 2. Okay, next, determining if a binomial is a factor. If you're asked if a binomial is a factor, you need to determine if it is one or is not one. There are two main ways to solve. One is factor and see if one of your binomials matches what you're given. The other is to start with a binomial and try working towards a polynomial. So first we'll look to see what needs to be multiplied by the binomial you're given to get our AX term. And then we look to see what we need to multiply by to get the C term, FOIL out, and compare to the given polynomial. So we'll do one example using one way, one example using the other way. So for example, is x plus 3 a factor of x squared plus 6x plus 9? So because we mentioned factoring first, we'll do the factoring method first. So this has a product of 9 and a sum of 6. So two numbers and multiply to 9 and add to 6 would be 3 and 3. So this would be x plus 3 times x plus 3, which can be simplified to x plus 3 squared. Now we can see it is a factor because we've got x plus 3 here, which matches as x plus 3. Now for other method, we'll do with this one. So is x plus 5 a factor of 2x squared minus 9x minus 5? So for this second method, I would do more in situations where you're having troubles figuring out what the factors of something are, because we'll just work backwards. So we'll start with our x plus 5, and we can see that we know whatever's here multiplies by this to give us our 2x squared, so therefore this must be a 2x. And then with FOIL, we know that this last term is created by multiplying this by whatever's here. So in order to get -5, we'd have to have this be -1. So what we'll do at this point is FOIL this out, collect like terms. If it gives us the same quadratic as we have here, then it is going to be a factor. If it does not, it is not a factor. So multiplying this out, we have x times 2x, that's 2x squared. And then we have x times -1, so minus x. Then we have plus 10x minus 5. So that gives us 2x squared plus 9x minus 5. So you'll see it's very close in this case, but it has a wrong sign on our 9x. So we can say it is not a factor. And next we have a difference of squares. So this is when we only have an AX term and a C term. So we don't have a BX term. And we have a minus separating the two. Now to factor these, it's very straightforward. We're just going to take the square root of our AX term and the square root of our C term, and we're utilizing those in our two binomial factors. So for example, this one, the square root of x squared is x. So we'll start each of our binomial factors with x. And then square root of 25 is 5, so we end each one with 5. And then a difference of squares means that one is positive, one is negative. We'll do the same thing with this one, except for this one we have a 49 in front, so square root of 49x is 7x. And square root of 36 is 6, so we've got plus 6 and minus 6.